first Versa Gray record is like a lot of bands' first records. We got together, we were jamming, we started to kind of get an identity, a sound with who we were and what kind of music we sounded the best playing. And we wrote some songs. We wrote a bunch of songs, and that became the first record, Burning the Circuitry, which was essentially the first 11 songs that we wrote as a band. Pretty much everything you hear on that record, on this new record, was planned and was written specifically to be on that part of the CD. So what we did first is we came up with a concept for the record. How we wrote, I think we wrote 4 or 5 different songs, and we did a demo recording of those songs, and we listened to them. We thought, well, it was kind of like, these are the different directions the band could go. And one of the songs in particular, I believe it is Fallen, had its own kind of vibe to it, and it also had a similar vibe to Pathological, which starts the record off. And the way those sounded, we thought, was a good basis to write a record around. Throughout the course of the year, maybe even it was a little longer than a year, started laying down ideas and piecing, really putting the different pieces together and coming up with what ended up being A Size to My Demons. When we started recording this record, it was a little different than Burning the Circuitry in that we had a lot more time. We set aside a whole month to do recording and mixing, so that was really cool, which meant that we could spend more time, obviously, getting stuff right.
Well, when we wrote Burning the Circuitry, we had formed the band, gotten together, and immediately started writing. On that record, we spent a year just getting songs together, trying to put together a show, and went and recorded the record straight off the bat. Before anybody knew who we were, before anybody had heard our name. So it took a little bit once we actually started playing shows to get people to recognize who we were and what we were doing. That time we had limited funds, limited time, and we did the whole thing in 7 days. And that was recording, mixing, and mastering. It ended up coming out pretty good, but we were rushed and we didn't get the chance to really put the time in to polish it and to make it as perfect as, we strive to make our music. This time we got more time writing, partly because we spent some time without a bass player, couldn't do shows, so we were writing a lot and looking for the right guy to come in and fill that spot and help us put the record together. So, we ended up spending, I think, about 1.5 years actually writing all the songs and getting everything laid out the way, we wanted it. And when we finally got into the studio, we had a really good plan of the way everything should lay out. We had to really spend some time tightening the drums, tightening the guitars, tightening the bass before the vocals ever even went on. So by the time I got in there, everything was pretty much perfect, which made my job a lot easier. Timing is the biggest issue with, recording, in my opinion. Like, everything's got to be in the right place at the right time, and I think this time that we got that done.
So I would say that differences, maybe as opposed to saying what's the difference from the last album, the difference from other things I've done, smaller things, because this to me is a bigger thing. It was definitely a much richer and better experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to work my gear, technique, timing, everything. Every aspect that you might not even think of as a musician. I learned a lot from Greg specifically at the studio when we were recording.
Typically, what's different from writing this album and the last album is the last album was pretty much hashed out. We wrote 11 songs and pretty much stuck with those songs and went and recorded them in the order that we wrote them, actually, even. So this album, we spent a lot more time picking through it, making sure everything was perfect as far as part-wise went, and as far as the vibe that the album was going through, and the atmospheres that we wanted to build with the songs to make it flow emotionally.
So really the bulk of the writing was in the spring of 2008. So we pretty much took all of 2008, all the way up till May of 2009, when we entered the studio at the very end of May to do the writing. Now really March and April leading up to going to the studio was more fine tuning, like little arrangement pieces, little drum fills, trying to get vocal parts ready and stuff like that. So really we were pretty much done with the actual writing and arranging probably March, but we took those extra couple months obviously to really practice and really get ready so that when we were in the studio we'd be able to execute and hopefully not have to do a lot of retakes and that kind of thing, and have a really firm idea of exactly what we wanted to capture in the recording.
Writing for the current album actually started before I joined the band. I did spend I joined in January 2009, and the first day of recording was May 30th, 2009. And I basically spent the majority of that time playing catch up and sort of writing some bass, a lot of work with Norm to make sure I'm following everything exactly, or at least ballparking it. So it was kind of catch up during that time, and then some writing in the studio and getting input as I went. So it was really cool. So it seemed to me like the other guys kind of had their thing already laid out and they pretty much knew what they were doing for the most part. And I kind of got a bit of both. Like I had some ideas and then I bounced some stuff off Greg, and he had a lot of excellent input and was able to make things even better than I was able to at certain key points. Like anytime I would get stuck, Greg would say, try this, or let's move this over here, and just always an excellent outcome.
We started writing this album probably in the summer of 2007, and we ended up really working on trying to make sure that everything was well thought out and planned. On previous records, I had a general idea of what the song was and went in and just thrashed it out and recorded it and hashed out the parts. This time, I went into the studio knowing pretty much every single cymbal hit, every single bass drum hit, every single fill, every single change that I was going to do before I even went in. So I had a really, really good idea and hands-on grasp of what I was going to try to accomplish in the studio.
Songs on the record we actually have been playing live for a while. Pathological for one, and Just a Piece. Singularity on the new record actually spawned from an older song that we used to play. And we played a couple times, but it never actually quite worked out the way we wanted it to. So we ended up kind of pulling that song back. We ended up rewriting it for the most part, taking pieces that were there and coming up with some new pieces, putting together into an entirely new song. And I think it's actually one of the strongest songs on the record. I really love the feeling. I love the way it moves. And that one I think is really cool. might be one of the harder ones to play live at this point because of how we ended up putting it all together. But if we can pull that one off, I think that would really, really go over well. We actually started writing the record. I believe, the first few songs ended up getting started around the summer of 2007. The bulk of the writing got done around spring of 2008, and we ended up getting Jared into the band, I believe, around January of 2009. So at that point, we ended up finishing up the writing, getting all the bass lines going, and getting his input on everything, and we ended up tightening the songs up all the way up until we started recording. When we were recording, we were actually finishing up a few of the arrangements and a couple of like the riffs and how things were going to be put together. I definitely still had some lyric writing to do and ended up finishing those the day I started recording, actually. But again, it was one of those things where it just needed a little extra time and a little bit extra inspiration in order to get the words flowing. But once they started getting written down, they really started to write themselves. And I ended up finishing all those songs, putting them all down, and I'm really happy with the way all the vocals ended up coming out. The harmonies that Greg helped me create, was one of the best things, because you start something and it's rough and it's one layer and you're not quite sure how it's supposed to sound or going to sound, and then you put a piece down and you hear it, and you put another piece down and you hear that, and you make a couple decisions and you start layering things, and it ended up just coming out huge, and that was really exciting. That was when you really start to hear the icing on the cake and hearing it as a whole song. That's when it really started to get really exciting.
So we went into the studio at the end of May 2009. I think it was May 30th actually, and we were there pretty much all the way through the end of June with Greg in his studio that they had really designed and built to record the new 32 Leaves record. Which is called Panoramic. It's a really good record. You should check it out. And we were pretty impressed when we heard the quality of the recording that Greg had made, and we thought that would be a really cool, viable alternative to a place to go record. And we liked the idea that it was going to be just us and Greg in a room, a couple rooms or whatever, recording and creating, and we had plenty of time. We had like over a month, so just all ended up working out perfectly.
Well, to record this record, we decided to go to the 32 Leaves house, which was actually Greg Norris, our engineer and / producer on the album, his home-built studio. And pretty much the concept behind that was we wanted our album to sound as much like us as possible. At the beginning of our recording, I went in and I was really nervous. It was a real new experience with me, working with the metronome, and I was real kind of out of my box at first. But then once I settled into the atmosphere and realized that I needed just to kick back and sink in with that click track and just record drum parts, then things just started flowing, and It really didn't take me much longer to record the drum parts for this album than it did any of the other ones that I've recorded because, well, once it started going, once the ball started rolling, it kept rolling, and, you know, I got through my stuff. And it was a big benefit going in to the recording process, knowing everything that I had to do, like the back of my hand.
Greg's actually worked with us, me and Jeremy, on our first record that we recorded with another band called Ignis, and he also was an engineer on Burning the Circuitry, the first Verse & Grace CD. So obviously we were really happy that he was available to be able to work on the new record, and we had an amazing time in the studio, and the whole process was unbelievable. And I guess we kind of didn't even want it to end because we turned a record that we were planning on recording in 1 month into a whole summer and a whole fall of tinkering and playing around with it and enjoying the process. So it definitely is one of these moments that we'll definitely won't forget. We'll remember this for a long time.
Working with Greg has always been a pleasure and has always been an experience at the same time. He's a very knowledgeable person on what he does and very easy to work with. He typically knows our styles and what we're capable of, and it was nice working with him because he was able to push us to do the best that we could possibly do.
He's real creative. He's got a really good ear. He definitely will work with you at your own pace. He's always got really cool ideas, and he pushes you to get a really good take. It's amazing sometimes the stuff he hears when you're playing that I would have never heard, or
Norris, our engineer and our producer, has been involved with working on our past projects and typically knows the kind of sound and the style that we play, I guess you could say, a little bit better than anybody else also. So
Sorry, when you talked to me, it threw me off because I'm an idiot. When you said something, it made me think about trying to listen to you.
like not a palm mute, but like where you hold the string. Yeah, just yeah.
We did our mixing and recording with Greg Norris at a little studio called Somewhere Else Studios in Peoria, Arizona, or Phoenix. We chose to go there. Basically, the guys had some time to do some scouting with various studios before I joined the band, so it was a pretty obvious choice. Greg did some work with the guys before, and it was phenomenal. Good communication, very easy to work with.
We went to record with our good friend Greg Allen Norris, formerly of 32 Leaves. He actually helped us out a lot with the first record, and we really liked what he put into that one and what he got out of us. I think going with Greg, he was able to produce without overproducing, without trying to make us do something that we weren't trying to do.
And we got an excellent signal, excellent sound. Everything that had been recorded before me was just right there, ready to go. It made everything so simple. I was actually very relaxed, and I learned. We did 14 tracks of recording, and by the time we were halfway down with the first track, I had a good idea of how to communicate with Greg and what he wanted when he said, and having everything right in front of me, his console, and looking at his point of view, it was just excellent. So it was a very good, especially for a first experience for me. So I know that if I have a choice, I would work with Greg again, no problem.
Like I said, Greg is phenomenal. He's got a great ear, and he could really hear what we were trying to do, and he would really spend his time listening and then trying to get our point. He didn't come in and try to make the song what he thought it needed to be. He came in and helped us make it how we thought it should be. It's great when you get somebody behind the boards that's willing to give a band that kind of credit, you know, and let us decide the direction.
During the recording process of this album, it was a lot different for me because this time I actually recorded the drum parts with a click track or a metronome. On past albums that I recorded with bands, it was pretty much count it off, hit record, and play through the song. I wasn't really that picky about making it perfect. As far as timing went, I wanted it to have a real live feel and live sound, but with this album I recorded all the drum parts with a click track and a metronome, and it ended up being a lot crisper and a lot cleaner sounding than the last one, so it ended up working out to our advantage. When we went in to record this album, I wanted to make sure that my drums had a really open and fat, heavy sound. I wanted all my drums to really stand out in the mix and really punch through where they needed to. So I used all my drums completely wide open, no mufflings on any of the drums whatsoever, and even went to the extreme of taking off my back head for my bass drum to where it would have a real thud and not so much overtone. And ended up getting a really, really good live drum sound on the record.
I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do when we went in, and the best part was I didn't really have to do a whole lot of expression with that. Greg had a really good sense of where to go, and everything he said just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going for something that jumps out and is semi-dominant for a bass sound without covering anything up or mashing everything up. Like when my conception of the way a sound should be, and one thing that a lot of people agree with, even audiophiles or people who also aren't musicians, who just love music and love high quality music, as far as recording quality and presentation quality, is my number one key point is when you hear that kick drum going, when you have a powerful stereo like in your car and you have a lot of bass going, that's what I want to move everything. And that's exactly what we achieved. So my goal as bass was to stand out, mix in properly, and glue everything together, and not interfere with that bass sound. And I've gotten a chance to hear everything. We just got done with the mastering, and everything is perfect.
Well, as far as the lyric writing goes, I really try not to spell things out. I try to be vague. I try to point toward ideas instead of pointing at them. Not a depressing feeling, but a depressed feeling. And the way that, you end up dealing with things and moving through them, all of that kind of came into effect with, the way each song moves into the next and out of the previous.
If you listen to the record, you're going to notice that the guitars are pretty clear, yet they still sound like they have bite and they sound aggressive. There's a lot of punch, but there's also a lot of bite at the same time. And that was really the idea, was make the guitars sound unique and sound powerful, but not to the point where you're distracted by them, or that they jump out too much or sound so different that you're distracted by the tone.
Mixing was interesting. Mixing was once we got everything recorded, like hearing it and really like changing a few pieces here and there and re-listening to it and re-listening to it and re-listening to it and burning copies and listening there and coming back and making some more changes and really it gave us the opportunity to really take our time and fine tune it. And
mixing the record was one of the funnest things about the whole process, because there's a lot of work, and it gets difficult when you're basically you're up to bat and it's your turn and it's your time and you got to lay your parts down and you got to make sure that what you wanted to express in the recording is there and things sound the way you want. You executed the parts properly. You didn't forget anything. I mean, there's a lot of different things, and when all that's done, and you get to hear the drums go down, then you get to hear the guitars, then you hear the bass kind of round that out, then you start to hear vocals and vocal harmonies and production elements with keyboards and synth and strings and etc. start to come on in layers and layers. Then you get to spend however long it is. I mean, a lot of bands maybe a week, some bands a year. Sitting there mixing your record, and we spent quite a bit of time mixing because we were really particular, and we took a lot of time comparing what our product was to our favorite bands and our favorite records, and kind of comparing and saying, maybe a little more kick drum, maybe a little deeper kick drum, maybe a little bit more attack on the snare, maybe a little bit more highs in the guitar, bass, tighten the bass up a little bit. Maybe the bass was a little too low or a little too high. So there's just a lot of things, bass volume wise, vocals, harmony volumes. I mean, the production, how loud do you want the synth? You want it to sound like it's all one unit coming at you. You don't want any one thing to sound like it's kind of off on its own or doing its own thing, and the rest is just kind of there behind it. So it's just this really fine balancing act of getting everything exactly where it needs to be so that it all comes at you and hits you like it's supposed to.
I actually got to have a little bit of input, specifically with certain parts of other things besides bass. Bass guitar actually ended up almost exactly where I wanted it. I didn't really have to say much about that, but there were certain parts about the guitar. There's a particular song where there's a thing Norm does where there's a swelling artificial harmonic, and I just requested a few times to bring that up, just make sure it doesn't interfere with the vocals, and it was so cool to hear the different mixes as they were being done, because I have copies of all the mixes, and you can actually hear those things coming into place. And I think mixing might be equally or maybe more fun than recording, because you actually get to play with it a little bit more, and you're not as nervous because you're not performing, when you're recording, and you're not having to worry about mistakes. You're just getting to focus on putting everything together and getting that track just the way you want it. So it's really definitely a lot of fun. I enjoyed that part.
I don't know shit about mixing, so I don't give a shit. It came out sounding good to me.
Just like he knew I would never see, pouring around me, surrounding me in all the nothing, demons I can't see are pounding me into something I just can't be.
Really cool process to hear something that we had been working on, recording and mixing for pretty much the whole summer and fall, actually kind of come out in its finished form when we left the salt mine. So that was really cool.
Spending the extra money and going the extra mile with the salt mine was a good bet for us, because we wanted this album to come out sounding as best as we possibly could make it sound.
the record in there to do the mastering. We ended up running it through some crazy gear. Ended up coming out really good, like phenomenal. Ended up tightening everything up, doing the professional EQ on it, running it through some analog tape, and really got a good sound out of it. And I'm ecstatic about it. I mean, when we finally got that into the CD player and listened to it, it did it. You know, we ended up getting into master the record December of 2009, so we got some time at the Salt Mine, booked John Gray actually to do the mastering for us. The guy's been working with the Salt Mine for a really long time, and he's worked with some really amazing people, and he's got a great ear, and he really did a good job you know, finalizing everything and EQing everything the way it should be through a pro system. And you know, it took a little time, and we were there all night, and you know, it was great. It was a great experience. It was a great atmosphere. John was awesome. Don Salter, the owner of the salt mine, was a good guy, and you know, he was really willing to help and help us get this done the way we felt it should be. And we really appreciate all the work that they put into this.
I really couldn't be happier. I'm happy with all the way that all of the instruments are meshed together. Everything has a really good mix and blends really well. There's nothing that really sticks out of the mix. So it makes all the music sound and go along the feel that it's supposed to follow transgressionally through the entire album.
I really thought it was really cool. The whole process, you get to go in and it's just full of all kinds of cool stuff. You know, from all the stuff on the walls from around the world, different instruments and, you know, pictures and autographs of other people who have been there. And we had a nice big room and, you know, a big old control board, you know. A little bit overwhelming at first, but it was really cool after a few minutes getting to talk with John. John actually did our mastering.
Try not to just record like just hours and hours and nothing, because I'm having to go through it all and find the cool stuff.
We went into the salt mine December 9th, I believe, and we were there, you know, over a whole night and into the morning. So you can imagine the scene of us laying on a couch trying to get a little bit of rest at 3 o'clock in the morning while there's this huge wall of speakers in the studio just blaring music, it's like a rock concert volume, and shaking everything in the room, and you're trying to get a nap while John is in there turning one knob, just this much, and then listening to the whole song again, and then turning it back to where it was, and turning this knob now, and just like really fine tuning and tweaking things, and trying to get it just right. And luckily, when we recorded the recording that Greg did for us and the mixing job that he did, things were very consistent with what was on, what we had laid down. So the mastering process was very much simplified by that, because a lot of the songs we were able to plug them in and just make minor kind of changes and get to where we needed to be quickly. And that's just a testament to Greg's work and how consistent and how good of a job he did mixing.
This is where the magic's at right
This
here.
is the SM57 calling. I want my cable back. Oh, cool. That was.
Pick 'em up. Not gonna break them.
When the band goes out and we play live, it's almost like I become a different person on stage. I get a step away from every ordinary, everyday life and become my alter evil ego on stage.
When we were in the middle of recording, we had just finished drums and all but one song on bass. We played a show live with mostly new material off the new record. The response was excellent. Versed and Grey definitely has a great following. It was my first show with the guys. And people there, when we played familiar material, they knew all the words. And it was just exciting to be up on stage. Packed house, people reciprocating with you, and that was the first time for me playing a show like that with such a united fan base, where I'm like, what is this sound coming through? And then you come to the front of the stage and you look where the lights are shining in your face, and you look past that and you see the people there. They know the words and they're singing along. It's very catchy. I'm very into what we're doing too. So that makes it so much better for me. I really do enjoy it.
I was real excited about playing all the new material live because I really wanted to see the crowd's reaction and response to the new stuff, because it's a little bit different. It's not as thrashy and hardcore as our other stuff, but it's a lot more thought out and well written, I think.
It's amazing to be able to get up on stage in front of, a bunch of people and really put something out that you've created. Being able to be in the lights and have the sound system backing you up and pushing that creation that we've gotten together and made, and actually presenting that to a crowd is an amazing feeling. And when it goes well, it is unbelievable.
It's really why you do the work of writing and putting out and recording records. You get that music, and they get to hold it in their hands, or they get it downloaded onto their player and listen to the music and basically get psyched up for the show. So when we go on stage, it's awesome to be able to look out in the crowd, see people, air drumming or air guitaring the music back at us, or singing the words to us. And it's really cool when you see when they know a stop comes up or something, and they're right there with you.
And I'll just have to do like a check to hey, what's up?
He said he doesn't mind.
Here, look, watch.
Dude, as long as you're not putting fucking dicks in my face, I don't give a fuck.
Package cam, dude.
The package cam, nice now. Balls are fine. The ball cam 200. Fucking super Z. Zero seat up here.
The concept that we had in mind really started with this idea of the CD going through the arc of the grieving process. So there's these 5 different stages of grief, and you can look them up on the internet or what have you, and you can learn more about that. But we wanted the essentially to tell a story of how we live our lives, which it seems like we're always in a constant state of some form of grief. The idea was that we would arrange the songs by their emotional energy. So the the emotion of the music would follow the arc of the grieving process, so that you're kind of on a musical journey through that as each song progresses. And because we came up with all of that beforehand, if you pay attention to the lyrics and kind of the stories on some of the songs, they also follow that same arc that the music follows. So in that way, I guess you could say that it's definitely a concept record.
It kind of comes off with an eerie kind of vibe. And I think that's kind of what we were looking for.
We modeled it after the 5 stages of grief, and it's kind of a running theme through the record. So, when we were writing, we tried to not really spell that out, but just move through the emotions. Move through the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and finally the acceptance. And that's where the record culminates and ends up, kind of finalizing itself. This record, I don't think, is very far from what we have been doing as a band. I think it is a little bit different. I think it is a little bit more well thought out and has a little bit more of concept to it than the first record. But I really can't wait to see how people react to it.
The name of the album, Sides to My Demons, is pretty much like you're stepping away from your everyday life, and you're dealing with your inner turmoils and your inner demons, and learning how to cope, pretty much, and deal with loss or change or pain, sorrow.
It's kind of, asides is kind of one of those words that a lot of people might not know what it is, but it comes from drama, actually. And what it is if you've ever seen a play or Broadway or whatever, sometimes the actor will stand off to the side of the stage, the lights will dim behind them, the light will kind of be on them for a minute, and they'll basically speak their thoughts and what their inner voice is saying, and they'll speak that to the audience so that you can be pulled into what is going on with that character. So that's what an aside is. So the idea is that the asides to my demons would be like our innermost thoughts, our innermost feelings, our inner dialogue, if you will, to our demons, to the things that haunt us, to the things that happen in our lives that are hard to get past or make it through. And that's it tied into the concept of the record of the grieving process and dealing with grief and the cycle that we go through repeatedly throughout our lives.
Is a piece of a movement, and they are thoughts, and they are feelings, and really kind of personal.
Just a stain. The eyes of grace have turned away.
Recording and mixing it, I'd already heard the album 10,000 times, and it was a good sign that I wasn't sick of it yet. And actually, it's been in my CD player, and I've been drilling it into my head ever since, and I'm still listening to it. And I'm still amazed by it. And I can't, I know every single note on the record. I know every single word, and no matter what, I'll be listening to it, and I can't wait for the next note, and I can't wait for the next word, and I can't wait for the next song. And when it gets to the end of the album, I want to hear it start over again. And I think that's a good sign. I think the album is long enough it's good enough to keep you interested, and it's long enough to let you want to hear it again when it's over. And I like listening to albums. I don't like listening to just a song or two on a record and changing it out. I like putting a record in and really listening to it from start to finish and hearing the album as a whole, as a piece. And I think this record is very easy to do that with. I mean, put it in, hit play, and let it go.
My tongue's been tied around my brain. The quiet pulls me to the drain. All that's been left is just a stain. The eyes of grace have turned away.
Thank you guys so fucking much. We got 32 leads coming up. We got 5 speed coming up after that.
The silence is all that remains. My tongue's been tied around my brain. The quiet pulls me to the drain. All that's been left is just a stain. The eyes of grace have turned away.
Looking at this, right?
I was looking all around.
Okay.
I couldn't focus on that. I was getting nervous when I was answering the questions. I was all, I'd start saying something,
All right.
I'd forget what I was saying, and then
Yeah, we're halfway on the battery, so.
All right. I'm Jeremy. Should I say my full name?
No, just do first names.
Hello, I'm Jeremy. I play drums in the band. And I like titties.
Maybe don't say hello. Just say.
I'm Jeremy and I play drums from Bursting Gray.
Yeah.
Bursting.
Yeah, just say that. I'm Norman, and I play guitar for Bursting Gray. Okay, I was moving a little bit. I'll do one more. I'll do one more. I'm Norman, and I play guitar for Bursting Gray. And I'm a PC.
Oh, yeah.
So what, are you gonna save it till hard drive?
Yeah.